Jim Ross was always eager to remind viewers that anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation, but that wasn't really true. While many things could have happened, some things were totally out of bounds. For example, the ghost of Frank Gotch was never going to turn up and challenge Stone Cold Steve Austin to a real wrestling contest. Likewise, Jerry Lawler was never going to set up a stall in the ring for a 1-hour debrief of selected quotes by Emmeline Pankhurst. There was a limit on what was possible, and mostly that was things that weren't impossible. Like, Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff having a big hug on the stage of Raw. Of all the things that could have happened, that surely is one of the most improbable. And back on the 15th of July 2002, when moments like that do happen, thermometers crack with the cold, as it's basically like hell freezing over. And this wasn't the only time that would cause wrestling fans to sit there slack-jawed. It has happened time and time again. My name is Simon from WhatCulture, and this is 10 times hell froze over in wrestling. Number 10, Brock Lesnar returns to UFC. Nobody could have seen Brock Lesnar returning to the Octagon so long as he was still under WWE contract, but sure enough, he ploughed down New Zealand brute Mark Hunt on the 9th of July 2016's UFC 200 with his employer's blessing. The Beast being allowed to have an MMA cameo wasn't anything anyone could have seen coming before it was publicly announced. Despite Vince McMahon's constant assertions that he's in different business to UFC, we all know that's bogus, and so it was impossible to imagine the boss allowing a contracted talent for fight for real on someone else's show. Furthermore, Brock was back in time for a fearsome SummerSlam destruction of Randy Orton, making the deal even more incredible. The fight came only a year removed from Lesnar himself suggesting he was fully focused on things going forward with WWE, and the MMA was a distant memory. It seems that Brock missed the spirit of true competition. Was one fight enough to satisfy that hunger, or will we all be, slightly less shocked, a second time? Number 9, WWE creates a new version of ECW. The original ECW was a big stick of blood-red chalk next to the mild cheese offered by WWF and WCW. Paul Heyman's outlaw outfit was defined by its raw, visceral nature, but apparently WWE never bothered to watch all those tapes they acquired. Their interpretation of ECW might as well have been children's TV. One Night Stand, a one-off tribute show in 2005, had been a roaring success, and so became a two-off tribute show the following year. Because again, dollars. Loving the smell of money, WWE decided it was high time to revive the brand permanently, and beginning 13th of June 2006, the company promoted an ECW program all of their own. Initially, everything seemed as it should. There was an aggressive theme tune, there was an angry Joey Styles, there was that weird brick wall thing, but sadly, that anger soon faded, giving way to a heavily sanitized WWE ECW show that may as well have been Velocity. Was this a failure by design, or was it a failure by incompetence? It's hard to say, but EC coming back was scarcely believable to begin with. That it became a bastardized version of itself was just depressing. Number 8, Ric Flair jumps to the WWF with the NWA title. The WCW title situation was a complete shambles in 1991. For some years, the company had been using the NWA heavyweight title as their top prize, and as the WCW brand caught great traction, eventually they just decided to rebrand the belt as their own. Ric Flair bested Sting at the turn of January to become the new WCW World Champion, but that was represented by the NWA's historic big gold belt. Wrestling. Soon after Flair's win, a creative dispute with VP Jim Herd led to a disgruntled Nature Boy bailing on the company altogether. The NWA had always stipulated that the title holder post a $25,000 deposit to the alliance, which would be reimbursed when the strap was dropped. When Herd refused to return Flair's money, the departing champ simply kept the belt. WWE was the only destination for an industry icon like Flair, and having the rival promotion's top prize in his possession made the defection even sweeter. Bobby Heenan hyped Slick Rick's impending arrival as the coming of the real world's champion, promptly followed by Flair emerging spectacularly adorned with that damn belt. Down in Atlanta, the eyebrows of a whole team of lawyers simultaneously raised. Legal action soon forced Flair to return the belt and start using a blurred out tag team title instead at live events. It hardly mattered though. Everybody had already seen the unthinkable. Number 7, Eric Bischoff shockingly appears on Raw. As we mentioned at the start of this video, for such bitter rivals, Eric Bischoff and Vince McMahon had a lot of things in common, and most of all, it was pride. That's what made the idea of these two peas from the same pod ever conceding to the other oh so unlikely. During their bitter Monday Night War, the WCW honcho had openly laid down the gauntlet to McMahon for a fight on pay-per-view. He also liked to play dirty, such as giving away his competitors' results right there on live TV. The idea of the two even looking at each other nicely, let alone hugging on an episode of Raw, seemed about as likely as Zack Ryder winning the world title, and yet yes, on the 15th of July 2002, that's exactly what happened. Eazy-E was named the show's general manager, but the role was purely on screen. Still, the fact he was even working for Vince was a minor miracle. Wouldn't you know it? Things worked out pretty well. Number 6, Jeff Jarrett in the WWE Hall of Fame. WWE's Hall of Fame isn't exactly a measure of industry achievement, as noted by James Dudley, who was effectively the McMahon family's chauffeur, and he got honoured way back in 1994. When you think about all of that though, it kind of explains why Jeff Jarrett's inclusion is utterly astonishing. Few men in the business have a list of misdemeanors against Vince McMahon as long as Jarrett. Double J left the WWE in acrimony after leveraging $300,000 to drop his IC title to China. The grudge stuck because Jarrett was then humiliatingly and personally fired on air from the company a second time after WWE bought out WCW in 2001. They got his contract and they flushed it down the toilet. Knowing he had no place back in Titan Towers, Jarrett doubled down the divide in founding TNA to directly challenge McMahon's empire. That didn't exactly happen, as we know, but his gall in attempting even to begin with put him firmly in Vince's no-fly zone for the next 16 years. So recently, when Triple H made the announcement that Jeff Jarrett was to be put in the company's Hall of Fame, hell did indeed freeze over, kind of. Or at the very least, we at wrestling fans all said together, how the hell did that happen? Number 5, Hulk Hogan turns heel. Years after Hulkamania had stopped running wild and was instead kind of limp, the Hulkster was still hawking the same red and yellow act that had kept him going since the mid-80s. That cash cow had long gone stale, and even the reinvigorating tonic of doing the same thing but in WCW had a limited effect. By 1996, something had to change, and Eric Bischoff knew exactly what. A heel Hulk Hogan had been briefly teased before, but no one had the confidence to go with it, least of all Hogan himself, who liked to make money and didn't wish to drive his gravy train into the ground. By this point though, it was clear it'd already been derailed. At Bash at the Beach, the unthinkable finally became the thinkable. When Hogan dropped a leg on Randy Savage and revealed himself as the Outsiders' Scott Hall and Kevin Nash's third man, the wrestling world was in shock. It was like John Cena turning heel, but John Cena has a moustache. That's how unfeasible all this was. Number 4, the New World Order helps WCW overtake the WWF. Hogan forming the NWO was shocking in itself, but even more so was that the black and white supergroup would eventually help WCW overtake WWE as the industry's leading brand. Just a month removed from the Hulkster's Bash at the Beach betrayal, Nitro beat Raw in the weekly ratings on June the 6th. It kicked off an incredible 84 consecutive weeks of WCW being on top before the company managed to metaphorically piss their pants and throw it all down the drain. It never even seemed remotely possible, but yes, WCW did become North America's top dog for a year and a half. Scarcely seems believable now, especially when you look back on everything. Number 4, Vince McMahon buys WCW. The WCW dominance ended with the group gradually eating itself from the inside. Like one of those wasps that zombify a caterpillar or whatever happens. I don't know, science. By the 23rd of March 2001, the once leader was now nothing more than a husk, which sounds bad, but it was bad. Still, that fact didn't make news of Vince McMahon buying his major rivals any less historic. It was a day wrestling fans had always fantasized about, much like Mario appearing alongside Sonic or Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville sharing a joke over a tedious Monday Night Football game. Those things would never happen. Wink, wink. Well, that day that many did dream of became true, but few predicted what a detrimental effect it would have on the business. On the day McMahon snapped up the remnants of his last remaining competition, he created an unbeatable monopoly. From a business perspective, he was the winner, and from a creative one, everyone was the loser. For several years, WW programming benefited from a huge roster of genuine stars plucked from the ashes of a defeated opponent, but over time, this single world order began to creak. With no need for fresh ideas, WWE were happy to fall into a holding pattern. Gradually, the innovative edge which made the 90s so exciting disappeared completely. So not only did hell freeze over when Vince McMahon bought WCW, but the resultant climate change turned the whole business tepid. Number 2, The Undertaker loses at WrestleMania 30. Before Michael Cole uttered those words, the streak is over, usually such an idea was only apparent in horrendous nightmares. The idea of The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak coming to an end was one of those bed-wetting night terrors which didn't seem like it could realistically come true. And then, on the 6th of April 2014, we all woke up with a dirty mattress. And who knew, with years ticking down in his career, perhaps The Undertaker would lose his streak someday, giving a hot new talent the rub. But no one ever thought it would be to part-timer and already superstar Brock Lesnar. But it was. Mouths wider than the Pacific Ocean dotted New Orleans' Superdome after a third F5 buried Taker streak for good, and everybody thought it was a mistake. You can't kill The Undertaker. He's already dead. But then, as the big screen graphic updated to read 21-1, all of a sudden, this was no longer a nightmare, and it was reality, and you had to deal with it. Number 1, Bret Hart does business with WWE after the Montreal Screwjob. A huge, disgusting ball of gob smacked Vince McMahon in the face, completing its journey from the mouth of a furious Bret Hart. Moments earlier, he desperately tried to scramble out of his own finishing move as the WWE chairman called for the bell on his career. We all know this story, and we all know it left Bret Hart an embittered shell of the incredible performer he'd been for the best part of 2 decades. In short, Hart was basically broken before us. The rift was real, and seemingly it would never end. For nearly 13 years, Bret gave the company the cold shoulder, even after WCW had long vanished, and none of that business even really mattered anymore. He was always committed to his character. Then on a 4th of January 2010 episode of Raw, all of that changed. Out sauntered the Hitman to the utmost delight of almost everybody on the planet, and what happened next, you wouldn't believe. After over a decade of animosity, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels stood face to face and said, "Let's just forget about it." In many ways, this was a lovely sight to see, but let's face it, none of us saw it coming.
Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Aren't you a star? Don't forget to subscribe below, and also the people who made this video, they're right here, so go and follow them and give them some love. If you want to see more content, there's probably some stuff flowing up above my head. Why not check it out? It could be fun. I'm not your dad.